My wife denied me intimacy for 8 months straight. Then I planned to bring her best friend to our home. I, 34M, have been married to my wife for 6 years now. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but what happened last month has completely changed our relationship, possibly forever. For context, my wife and I used to have a healthy physical relationship. Not perfect, but satisfying enough for both of us. About 8 months ago, things started to change. At first, I thought it was just a phase, work stress, family issues, the usual suspects. But as weeks turned into months, I started to notice a pattern. Every time I initiated intimacy, she would have an excuse ready. Headache, tired, not in the mood, had to wake up early, etc. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I suggested we talk about it, maybe see a counselor, but she brushed it off saying I was overthinking things. But how could I not, when we went from regular intimacy to barely touching each other in the span of a few months? I started to suspect the worst. Was she seeing someone else? Had she fallen out of love with me? These thoughts consumed me, making me irritable and distant. Our conversations became tense, often ending in arguments over the smallest things. Then came that fateful Friday evening. I had planned a surprise date night, dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant, followed by a movie she'd been wanting to see. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help rekindle what we'd lost. But when I told her about it, she seemed hesitant, almost annoyed. "I'm meeting my friends for drinks tonight," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "You should have checked with me first." Something snapped inside me. "Your friends? Again? We haven't had a proper conversation in weeks, let alone anything else." She rolled her eyes. "Not everything is about intimacy, you know. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with it, we'd have a better relationship." That hurt. It hurt because it wasn't true. I wanted intimacy, yes, but more than that, I wanted connection, partnership, the feeling that we were still a team. And lately, it felt like we were anything but. "Fine," I said, grabbing my keys. "Have fun with your friends." I drove around aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. Eventually, I ended up at a bar downtown, one I knew my wife and her friends didn't frequent. I needed space, time to think about what our marriage had become. That's when I saw her, my wife's best friend, sitting alone at the bar, nursing what looked like a whiskey sour. We'd met several times before at gatherings and always got along well. She was intelligent, funny, and easy to talk to. And right now, she was exactly what I needed, a familiar face who wasn't my wife. I approached her, and she seemed genuinely happy to see me. "Aren't you supposed to be with my best friend tonight?" she asked with a smile. "Change of plans," I replied, taking the seat next to her. "She's out with friends. I thought that included you." She shook her head. "Not tonight. I needed some alone time." We started talking, and it felt good to have a conversation that didn't end in an argument. We talked about work, life, our mutual friends. I was careful not to mention my marital problems. It felt disloyal somehow, even though I was bursting to talk about it. After our third drink, she must have sensed something was off. "Is everything okay between you two?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. And just like that, the dam broke. I told her everything. The distance, the rejection, the constant feeling that I was doing something wrong but not knowing what. I didn't go into explicit details, but I made it clear that our relationship was strained, particularly in the intimacy department. She listened, really listened, without judgment or interruption. When I finished, she placed her hand on mine in a comforting gesture. "I'm sorry you're going through this. Have you considered that there might be something she's not telling you? Depression, stress, health issues?" I hadn't. I'd been so focused on what her rejection meant for me that I hadn't considered she might be struggling with something herself. It was a sobering thought. "You should talk to her," she advised. "Really talk, not just about the intimacy, but about what's going on in her life, her mind." By the time we left the bar, it was close to midnight. I felt lighter, clearer. I thanked her for listening and offered to drive her home since she'd had a few drinks. She accepted, and as we walked to my car, she stumbled slightly. I caught her arm to steady her, and for a brief moment, there was a tension between us that hadn't been there before. I ignored it and helped her into the car. The drive to her place was quiet, almost uncomfortably so. When we arrived, she turned to me. "Do you want to come up for a coffee? Sober up a bit before driving home." I hesitated. There was something in her invitation that seemed innocent enough, but after our conversation and that moment of tension, I wasn't sure it was a good idea. But the thought of going home to an empty house, my wife had texted saying she was staying at her sister's, was depressing. "Sure," I said. "Coffee sounds good." Her apartment was cozy, filled with books and art. It reflected her personality, warm, cultured, inviting. She made coffee, and we sat on her couch, continuing our conversation from the bar. She shared some of her own relationship struggles, and I found myself opening up even more. At some point, she moved closer, her leg touching mine. I should have moved away, but I didn't. The physical contact, even something as innocent as a leg touch, felt good after months of rejection. You know, she said, her voice soft. Any woman would be lucky to have someone as attentive and caring as you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that made my heart race. It would have been so easy to lean in, to seek comfort in her arms, to feel wanted and desired again. But I didn't. Because despite everything, I loved my wife. And betraying her, especially with her best friend, was a line I wasn't willing to cross. I should go, I said, standing up abruptly. Thank you for the coffee and the conversation. She looked surprised, maybe even a little hurt, but nodded. Of course. Drive safe. I left her apartment with a mixture of relief and regret. Relief that I hadn't done something I would have regretted, and regret that my marriage had reached a point where I was even tempted. The next morning, I woke up determined to have a real conversation with my wife. But when she came home, she was distant, almost cold. When I tried to talk to her, she brushed me off, saying she was tired and needed space. That's when I made a decision. A petty, childish decision that I'm not proud of, but one that felt justified in the moment. I invited her best friend over for dinner the next day, knowing my wife would be home. What is she doing here? My wife asked when she walked in and saw her best friend sitting at our dining table. I invited her, I replied calmly. We ran into each other last night and had a good conversation. I thought it would be nice to continue it. My wife's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, confusion, anger, and finally, something that looked like fear. She pulled me into the kitchen, her voice a harsh whisper. What are you doing? Having dinner with a friend, I said. Is that a problem? You know it is, she hissed. What did you tell her? I raised an eyebrow. About what? She didn't answer, just stared at me with a mixture of anger and panic. Dinner was painfully awkward. My wife barely spoke, her eyes darting between me and her friend. Her friend, to her credit, tried to keep the conversation flowing, but even she seemed to sense the tension. After dinner, my wife practically pushed her friend out the door, promising to call her the next day. As soon as the door closed, she turned to me, her face a mask of fury. What was that about? She demanded. I could ask you the same thing, I replied. Why were you so uncomfortable with her being here? She avoided my gaze. I wasn't uncomfortable. I was just surprised. Surprised enough to barely speak during dinner and rush her out afterwards? She didn't answer, just started clearing the table with more force than necessary. Is there something you're not telling me? I pressed. She slammed a plate down. Like what? Like why you've been avoiding intimacy with me for months. Like why you're so defensive right now. She turned to face me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You want to know why? Fine. I'll tell you why. I've been seeing a therapist. I was diagnosed with depression 3 months ago. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed, because I thought I could handle it on my own, because I didn't want to be a burden. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Why wouldn't you tell me? I'm your husband. We're supposed to support each other. Because you always want to fix things, she said, her voice breaking. And this isn't something you can fix. It's something I have to work through. And yes, it's affected my desire for intimacy. It's hard to want physical connection when you barely feel connected to yourself. I moved towards her, but she stepped back. And now you've brought my best friend into it. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? To know that you've been discussing our problems with her. I didn't go into detail. I defended. And I was desperate. You wouldn't talk to me. So you thought what? That making me jealous would solve our problems. I hadn't thought that far ahead, to be honest. I just wanted to shake things up, to make her react, to break through the wall she'd built around herself. But now, seeing the hurt in her eyes, I realized how childish and counterproductive my actions had been. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I was hurt and confused. I should have tried harder to understand what was going on with you. She wiped away a tear. And I should have been honest with you from the beginning. I was afraid you'd look at me differently, that you'd think I was broken. Never, I said, reaching for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. You're the strongest person I know, and we'll get through this together, at your pace. It's been a month since that night. My wife is still seeing her therapist, and now we're also seeing a marriage counselor together. It's not perfect. We still have our struggles, and intimacy is still a work in progress. But we're talking, really talking, and for the first time in months, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. As for her best friend, she's been understanding and supportive. She's given us space to work on our marriage, while still being there for my wife when she needs her. There's no awkwardness between us, which I'm grateful for. I've learned a valuable lesson through all of this, that sometimes the problems in a relationship aren't about what's happening between two people, but what's happening within each person. And that patience, understanding, and open communication are the keys to weathering any storm. If you're going through something similar, my advice is this: talk to your partner. Really talk. Don't assume, don't accuse, just listen. Because there might be a battle they're fighting that you know nothing about. And remember, while intimacy is important, so is emotional connection and support. Sometimes, that's what your partner needs most. Update 1. It's been 6 months since my last post, and I thought I'd share an update on our situation. My wife's therapy has been going well. She's been on medication for her depression, and while it's not a magic fix, it has helped stabilize her mood. We've continued with marriage counseling, which has been instrumental in improving our communication. The intimacy aspect of our relationship has improved, but it's still not what it used to be. And that's okay. I've learned to appreciate other forms of connection. Deep conversations, shared activities, simple touches. These things matter just as much, if not more. Our relationship with her best friend has evolved too. Initially, there was some awkwardness, especially after that dinner at our house. But over time, we've managed to move past it. She's been a supportive presence, respecting our boundaries while still being there for both of us. There have been setbacks, of course. Days when my wife's depression hits hard, when she withdraws and I feel that familiar sting of rejection. But now, I understand it's not about me. It's about her struggle, her journey. And my role is to support her, not to take it personally. I've also had to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. My initial reaction to my wife's rejection was to assume the worst, to make it about me. I didn't consider that she might be going through something. That's something I'm working on. Being less self-centered, more empathetic. To those who commented on my original post suggesting I leave her or get even, I'm glad I didn't listen. Marriage isn't about winning or losing. It's about growing together, supporting each other through the tough times. For now, we're taking it one day at a time. Some days are better than others, but we're on the right path. And for the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful about our future together. Thank you for all your support and advice. It means more than you know.